Hello and welcome. Today I want to color up this young lady who is spending some time out in the winter weather. Unfortunately today, I live in New York. It snowed here this morning. It wasn't anything major, but still we're still fighting off some colder weather. I'm so ready for summer. The sentiment on this card reads, "Dear winter, I'm breaking up with you. Summer is much hotter than you." So this is just meant to be a little bit of a funny card. At least for me, I think it's funny. I'm so ready to see winter go. I colored two of these up actually. There's a couple little differences. This one, the jeans are a little lighter. Here they're a little darker. I think I actually like the lighter jeans. I changed her eye color, but I think I really like the green eyes, and I changed the color of her bow on her hat to match her pants, and I think I like that little detail. So what I decided to do is color up a third one, and I'm going to take characteristics of each of these cards and mash them up into a third card and see if I like them all together. So let's get started. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to start with her skin. I'm going to use, I'm just pulling the markers out here. These 5 markers, I'm going to use E000, E00, E11, E13, and E21. I'm going to start with the lightest color, which is E000. And the first thing I'm going to do is coat her entire face. And this is going to allow the colors to move more freely on the paper. And what I want to do is map out where the shadows are on her face. And the reason I'm using double O is that if I mess up with this and it doesn't look right, then this is very easy to fix. If I mess up with E13, it's very hard to fix. Now, I've colored her several times and I'm pretty confident on where the shadows go. But I wanted to show you the process that I do, that I use to color something like this so that you can kind of see. So here I'm putting in some shadow. There's going to be shadow along the brim of her hat. There's going to be shadow along this side of her face, under her nose, on the very sides of her mouth, and then I like to imply a nose. So we're not really drawing a nose in, but we're creating a shadow. And it's kind of like a little half circle up the side of the face. And so I know that's really light and you might have a hard time seeing it through the camera, but do it on your paper and you're going to get it to the point where you think it looks nice before you go in with your darker colors. Now that I have those in there and I'm like, okay, so now essentially I'm tracing over those with my E13. So now I'm coming in with E13 and I'm just flicking along the brim of her hat. I'm going to flick along the strand of hair here. I forgot to do that with the double O, but that's a for real shadow. Under her eye, along the side of her face, and now E13 is going to also look really dark, and that's okay. Okay. Now I'm going to put just a teeny little smidgen under her nose, a little bit under the lines in her face. And then my favorite part is then we're going to imply this nose, which is like this little half circle, which you can probably see now. And then if you want to get really detailed, there's going to be a little one under the tip of her nose. So as it stands, holy cow, we've got a hot mess, right? But it's going to work out okay because we're going to start blending this out. So now I'm dropping down to an E11, and now I'm starting where I originally put that E13, and I'm flicking that out, making these shadows a little more pronounced. They're going to start to make a little more sense. You have water in your blue cup, babe. Well, baby, I'm coloring, honey bunny. You can reach your water. If you can hear all that, my son is here helping me today. Don't forget her ear. I often do that. So this is E21. And again, I'm just extending these shadows out. Now, on this side of her face, now that I'm in my lighter colors, I'm going to start putting a shadow around this side of her eye. Now I'm going to come back in with E00. Still pushing these colors. Don't forget the ear. I forget the ear all the time. Sometimes I get the face all colored, and I'm like, oh, and I have this white spot where her ear is. Pulling these colors down around the bottom of her face. And then we're going to go back to E000. And we're going to continue to blend these out. Now her face is going to look really dark at this point, and that is because everything around her is really white. This took me a long time to realize when I was coloring. When I first started coloring with Copics, I'd color and be like, oh my god, this is so dark. And then, you know, I'd start over and I'd make these people and they would look like vampires. And, you know, when they got done, comparative to what I do now, oh my gosh, they're so fair skinned. And as you go, you start to realize it's about contrast, and you want the depth in the skin because then they start to look like real people. So now that I got to this point, I'm going to come in with R20, and I want to make her cheeks a little rosy, especially because she's outside and your cheeks get pink. I'm going to start flicking in that R20. And I like to do this when my cardstock is good and wet with alcohol, because I like my cheeks to look more natural. If you waited until the skin dried and went back and added the blush in after the fact, it would look more cartoony, like a pink circle rather than a natural extension of the color. So I'm pretty happy with how her face turned out there, so I'm going to let that be. But while I have E000 out, I'm going to now color in her neck, her two little arms that are showing. And this girl is brave because she's got her little waist showing on this snowy day. Far cry from what I would do. I would be bundled up because I hate the cold. All right, so now I'm popping up to E13, and this is because, actually, let's model good behavior. Let's go to E00 and let's shadow map. Again, if you are confident and you know where your shadows are, go right up to your darkest color. You know, like I said, I've colored this at least twice now. I'm pretty familiar with her face and where all the shadows are. But the first time I did this, I went in with E00 and kind of mapped out and said, okay, so I know that under her chin's going to be at one, this little dip in her neck, the underside of her arms, and along the edge of her fabric and her waist is where the shadows are. So now that I've done that, I can come back with E13. Now that step's only, again, only if you are unsure with where the shadows are. And very lightly, and my pen, I'm only holding it almost straight up, I hope you can see around it, to put in these little details. And because you don't want these lines to be super thick, you want them to be very narrow. You're just putting in a little bit of shadow. So along the edge of her clothes. And now I can start blending that out. So this is E11. Just little flicks up. Excuse you, babe. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to skip E21. I'm going to go right down to E00 because these are such small spaces. And I'm just little tiny flicks pushing that color up. And then finishing it off with E00, blending this out in its entirety. And there we go. We've got her skin taken care of. So now I'm going to set my skin tones aside, and I'm going to grab my blues for this project. I want to work away from the face now. I want that to dry. So I didn't want to come in and do the jacket or her hair. So I wanted to pick something far away from that. So we're going to go with her pants. So I have B99, B97, B95, B91. Oh, and I forgot B93. I'm going to take my B99 and set it aside. I'm only going to use that at the very end. I'm actually going to start off with, let's start off with my B97. And what we're going to do is start flicking in where we think the shadows are. And we're going to make these very small flicks along the inside of her jeans, along the top, just a real tiny bit here, under her knee. Along this edge here. This is like a fold, so it's going to be a little darker there. And I'm still using the flicking motion, but I'm kind of outlining it a little bit, I guess. To me, this helps me give me a base of where to start my flick strokes. It also is putting some ink on the paper that I can use to blend out with my lighter colors. Sometimes I go through my markers twice on this just to get the level of blending that I'm hoping for. So let's see how this goes. So that was E97. Now I'm going to go down to E95. And so now I'm going to start pushing these colors out. And here's where you can start to really push that E97 out a little farther. And I didn't do that part in E97. I wanted that to be a little lighter because it's like the material stretched out a little bit because your knee's stretching it. So I wanted that to be a little lighter. So I'll put a little bit of E95 there. Hopefully you can see around my hand. All right, moving down to E93. And as you go through your colors and they get lighter and lighter, your flicks are going to get bigger and bigger, closing in that area. And then lastly, E91. That should be your highlight of the jean. Just using this to blend and push the colors in any places I see they need to be blended a little bit more. So now let's do the other leg. We'll do the same way we did this leg, and then we'll decide if we need to come back in with E99 and darken up anything. This image is by Krista Smith. It's not a stamp, it's a digital image, so you pay a fee and then you're able to download it from her website. It's something you just print with your computer. You do have to have Copic Safe ink in your printer in order to print this. So that does pose a little bit of a challenge because not all ink is Copic Safe. But I really like her style of art. I really like her characters. I've been buying them for years. They really, I don't know, there's just something about them that's really special. This is hard to describe. So hopefully you enjoy her and think she's kind of fun to play with. All right, so now E95. Okay, still just working on pushing that color into the center of the leg. Do a little bit here. So as I'm coloring here, we are in the middle of the COVID pandemic. I hope you guys are holding up okay at home. We are doing okay. We're certainly, I'm glad we're safe. We are okay. We are struggling a little bit with cabin fever, but I think the whole country is, but we're not going outside. Today it's been raining and the weather hasn't been great. It snowed a little bit this morning, But today in the rain, I took my son outside to play. We had to get outside for some little bit of time. So hopefully as the weather gets better and warmer, we're able to get a little bit more energy out, because having a 3-year-old in our house who has energy to burn has been the biggest challenge, I think. So hopefully we can overcome that soon with some warmer weather and more walks and whatnot. Okay, so that was basically the jeans. I'm gonna let this dry just a second. I got a lot of alcohol on here, a little mark or something on the paper. I noticed this leg is a little darker than this leg, which is okay. I am going to come in with B99. I can fix the difference in shading here. And what I'm going to do is I'm only using B99 to emphasize a little bit of shadows. So I'm just going to come in and flick along some of these artist drawn lines to emphasize some of the shadows. And then when I blend this out, I'm going to be able to even these legs out. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. But I'm not doing the whole leg. I'm not trying to reshade every little thing. She has the legs drawn here, they're the pant. You can kind of see the back, like this is the side seam. So I'm making the seam a little darker because it usually is. But this gives her shape back, and she's got such a cute little figure. Kind of cute. So I'm just flicking along those lines a little bit. And I think that's all I'm going to add of that. And so now I'm going to just take some of the B97 and just, especially on this leg because it is a little lighter, blend that out a little bit. So I would love it if you tell me what you guys have been up to or what your projects have been since you've been home, and most of the country is on a stay-at-home order at this point. So I'm sure we're all kind of struggling a little bit. Hopefully you're getting some coloring in. I'm enjoying having more time to make videos, but as you can hear my son right now, I have no quiet place in my house to make videos, so having to work with him in the background most of the time, which if I get him occupied right now, he's watching his favorite cartoon. I'm gonna get as much of this filmed as I can, and if I have to, I'll film it the rest after he goes to bed. So, and because I'm just trying to darken this leg up a smidgen is the only reason I'm coming in here. This is B93. And then now see they're starting to match a little bit more. So if you ever have that problem, it's not a big deal. Notice I didn't add a bunch more of the darkening, because then I would have been playing this game of now this leg's darker. So these are starting to look more like a real pair of jeans versus a mismatched pair of jeans. And I'm pretty happy with that. While I have my blues out, I'm definitely not using B99. I probably will use a tiny bit of B97. I'm going to color the bow on her hair. When I did the first two, you can do whatever you want if you're coloring along with me. Obviously, you can do any color scheme you want. But the first time I colored it, I put a pink bow on there. And I was like, you know what? That kind of gets lost, and that's a fun little detail in this. So I decided the second time to use the same blue. So I think I'm going to do that again this time around. And I'm starting with B95, and just in the deepest folds of the bow, I'm flicking in some color here. Trying to keep my hand out of it, but it's so hard in these detailed places. You do have to hold the marker pretty vertical. And now I'm going to start blending that out with B93, just pushing that color out a little bit more. And then lastly, the last little bit with B91. Now, because I like contrast and I like when the details stick out, I'm going to come in with B97 and I'm just going to, in the deepest, darkest parts of this bow, add just a smidgen of that. And that'll really help give the bow shape. And again, if you are just getting started with Copics, feel free to skip that step. That step does take a little bit of practice, and if you feel like you're messing it up or it's just too much anxiety, skip it. All right, now I'm going to get out some pinks. I have my R89. Let's see. Oh, I know I was missing one. So I have R89, R85, 83, 81, and RV10. I'm going to stick my 89 aside, and I'm going to start with my R85. So I'm taking R85, and I'm going to, in the folds of her dress, flick along the edges of her folds, along the edges of her jacket. Down here where it scoops, kind of gets pulled together. And I'm going to add, let's see, did I add anything else? I did. I was looking at my other card, and I'm adding in a couple more little areas of interest to her dress. I'm just kind of flicking in where the artist could have drawn a line, but she didn't, so I'm just kind of adding in a little bit more detail. All right, then I'm going to take my R83 and I'm going to start working on those colors and flicking along the edges of them. And continuing along with R81. And now I'm going to come in with RV10, and I'm going to use that to fill in the rest of this dress. Now, I think this kind of looks like a hot mess, so we're going to go back in and do that step again, and it's going to really deepen and pull these colors together. So this time, I think what I'm going to do is add a little bit of R89 to really get a shadow in those folds. And now the paper is kind of wet enough that you can move this color around. Where before it didn't have as much alcohol on it and it just kind of sits. And once it gets to that sitting place, it's really hard to move dark colors. So that's kind of one of my tricks, is that I try to wait to put the dark on until I have some alcohol in the paper and the fibers and it's really ready to move. That's one of the reasons I wait. Okay. So I think that's in a good enough spot. So now I'm going to start blending this out with R85, really pushing it. Now I didn't really want any RV to show in between her jacket because that should be more shadowed than the rest. So I only let the RV10 really show towards the bottom of her skirt where it should kind of be blowing in the wind a little bit, looks a little bit more detailed, but this should give the illusion of some folds and some detail to our skirt. All right, now if we want to come back in here and add anything we can, but I'm thinking that looks pretty good right now. So now I'm going to come in here with R85 and I'm going to start coloring the inside part of her dress. And the deepest, darkest parts here are going to get R85. Actually, they're going to get R89, but we're going to start with R85. And we're going to pull that down with R83. And then R81. And I'm not putting any of the RV10 in there because it's farther back and it gives the illusion of it being more shadowed. Maybe you could have put a little bit here, but whatever. Now I'm coming in with my R89, just adding a little bit of shadow, especially in that spot right there, here, and along her body on this side. And I'm just going to now blend this out with R85 and go through the other colors. And lastly, R81. And hopefully that looks like it does look like it to me. Hopefully it does to you too, that this is on top of this. And I have a little spot here where I just have a teeny bit of a brush stroke that went outside the lines. I'm just going to take a white gel pen and cover that up because it was driving me nuts. So there we go. So that's that. I might come back and do a little bit. We'll see how the rest of this goes. But I'm going to set R89 down. I think I'm done with that for now. I'm going to do her gloves. And I'm going to start here. Put R85 on the bottom part of her gloves. A little bit in that fold. And then I'm just going to flick that and blend this out. These colors, if you've never used them, are a dream to blend. They're some of my favorite pinks to give beginners because they're so easy. I picked them because I love how they look with the blue jean color here. You could go with more vibrant color, but these are kind of like a, I don't know, maybe a more mature pink. That's kind of the way I would look at it. Instead of like a bubblegum pink, they're more, it's a grayish pink. So a color you might see more on somebody who was in their 20s or 30s rather than a little girl. I wasn't trying to make her look like a little girl. All right, and then I'm also going to do her hat. So I'm going to start here on the sides and start, oops, oh, that's all right. I'm trying very hard to hold my markers farther back so you can see, but I've been making a little bit more mistakes, but it's okay. Nothing major. And then a little bit of RV10. I'll have all the colors listed on my blog, so if you wanted a complete list, don't have to feel like you're following along the entire time. I'll have them all listed on my blog, and the blog link will be posted below this video. So I colored the whole headband with RV10, and then I'm going to come back in with RV81 and around the edges add some dimension to this, and then blend that out with RV10. And I've decided I'm going to come in here a little bit because I want the hat to look like it matches her dress a little bit. Just around the edges of this, I'm going to add in just a little bit of R89 below the edges, and I'll blend that out. R89 is really dark, so it's going to darken up your hat quite a bit. It's going to, anything you add it to is going to darken it up quite a bit. So, but it does provide contrast and a richness to the project, which is, really what you're going for. So there we go. In that area where I went outside the lines just a little bit, I'm using my RV10 to push that color back up into the hat. I'm going to let that dry, and we'll come back to the hat a little bit, so I'll leave these up here. Just let that dry because I feel like it's awfully wet. So let's pull out some W markers. I'm going to use W10, W8, W6, and W4. I'm going to use these to color her jacket. Now, you could use anything. Actually, I debated about using the C tones, but in the end, I decided to do this. Krista, when she drew this, added a lot of really cool details to this coat, but I decided that I was going to eliminate some of them just to make it a little bit easier to color. So it's up to you. You can definitely go around them if you want. But I'm going to start adding in with W10 the shadows to this coat. So I've decided that in between her arms would be very dark. So, and then this side, her other arm is actually behind her. So on her arm is going to be darker than the part that's on her chest. So she's kind of standing a little bit awkwardly. Okay. So then I'm going to come in with W8, and along those same lines, I'm going to start flicking along that and deepening that area. When you are coloring, be careful. There is a piece of her hair that's in front of her jacket. I'm debating about what to... I'm going to color right over the buttons. I'm going to add those back in at the end, but I'm not going to worry about them now. So all the buttons on our coat, I'm not fretting about. They are what they are. And then my latest is W4, so I'm going to color the rest of this in with W4. And I know I'm going to need to go back over this and blend this in again, but now the paper should be pretty saturated with alcohol and make that a lot easier to do. And we also have a good part of our shadows in already, so we can build off of that. Okay, so starting back with my W10, I kind of wanted this to look like a leather coat-ish. But if you let too much of the W4 show, W4 looks very brown. So I didn't want that to be the focus, but I also didn't want to lose. If you do just too much W10, then it looks like a black blob. So you need it to balance between your W10 and your W4 very carefully, or you end up with a very odd look of things. So it's better to do it in stages than to just kind of rush into the whole thing and be like, yeah, because then you either end up with one or the other. So in my case, I like to put a little dark on and work my way up than to overdo it, because I can always go darker, I can't go lighter. So this is starting to look more like what I imagined in my mind. You can still see the shape of the jacket. Little areas here. And then while I have these out, I'm going to do her shoes. And her shoes are not a major piece of this, so they're really easy and fast to do. I just put a little bit of W10 in the corners and then blended that out with W8. And then finished them off with W6. And then these are just the tops of the shoes. And then I just decided the sides of the shoes are usually a different color. So I decided to go in and make them W4. And honestly, when it's all said and done, they just look like shoes. You know, there's nothing special about them, but seriously, they're not the focal point. So we don't need to stress about that, really. All right, now that we did that, the top of this should be dry. We're done with R89. So I'm going to come back in here on this side with R81. And I'm just going to add in a little bit more because I had to use the RV10 to blend that out. And then I'm going to take R85 and just in these little parts of her headband, I'm going to color them in just to add a little bit of, I don't think I added anything else. No. Just add a little bit of interest and break that up a tiny little bit. So now we're done with our pinks and those can go away. And let's work on our hair. So to do her hair, I decided to use the E29, 27, 25, and 23 and 21. And I'm going to start with my E27 and I'm setting my E29 aside. And I'm going to start going in and breaking her hair up. And in the places I think it's the darkest, I'm going to start with my E27. And I try not to think too hard about this, but I'm not going to lie. This is the hardest part of coloring still for me is hair. And I've spent a lot of time practicing it, but there's so much detail into, especially Krista Smith's images and hair. She does such a great job of capturing it and want to do it justice. I don't want to just, you know, if you're watching this at any point, you're like, oh my God, this looks tedious and I hate it. It's okay to skip details. You know, I happen to like details. I've actually decided to skip, what was it, E25 for now, and I'm just coming in with E23 because I wanted to see a difference and I wanted more contrast. Now this is where I decided I'm going to pretend that one little line there for the ear is not there. And if I covered it with a dark enough color, then you can't really see it gets lost in the hair, and the person looking at this picture when it's all said and done is never going to know that there was a weird little mark. Now I'm coming down with E21, and this is my highlight. And I realize I have to, whenever I hold my pen straight up, I know it's hard for you to see, but that is where you get the lightest colors, or the finest lines, that's what I meant to say. I'm trying to keep my paper like this because I think it's easier for you to see. Okay, I still think this looks like a hot mess, but I'm going to let it sit. I want that to dry a minute before I put the next layer on. So while that dries, I'm going to tackle the sign way down here, far, far away from that. And I'm going to use E47, E44, and E43. And with E47, I'm just going to come in here and kind of accentuate some of the artist drawn lines. And she already made it look like wood, so we don't have to do a whole lot more. So I'm just kind of adding on top of that. And wood is kind of all over the place, so you can be all over the place with this. And I'm just kind of flicking in anything that looks a little bit like wood grain. And I'm leaving a little bit of room to come in with my E43 as a highlight, so there's something for that to contrast off of. All right, and we're done with our E40s. The wood is done. I think it's safe to come back in and do some hair. So let's see, I might do a little bit of E29 now. And I'm just trying to break up the sections by adding in some really dark shadow here. And not a lot. I don't want the whole hair to be dark. I'm just trying to put it in the darkest spots. This one piece that's like in front of her face, which is so cute. You just have to make sure you're really straight up and down when you color that one. Okay, Willet. All right, I think I'm going to be all done with E29. I think I'm going to come in with E25 now and try to flick in and break up some of these areas that are too light. So I'm just breaking up areas that I think are too light. I'm not trying to cover the light, just break them up so they're not too obvious. Okay. And now I think her hair is done to me. That looks okay. There's lots of texture. It's a little bit darker than the original I colored, but you know what? I think it's fine. And I really like the green eyes. So this one I did green eyes, and the other one I did brown eyes. If you want brown eyes, I used the same colors as I did on the sign with the same technique. So you're just going to pick the light brown. I'm taking light green, and what I'm going to do is I'm coloring the iris light green. And then I'm going to let that dry. And this is the key step to this, is you need to let that dry. While that's drying, let's do the lips. For the lips, I used R81. And we're going to color in her lips. And you could call that done, but because I don't know why I can't leave anything simple, I'm coming in. This is R56, and I just like the way this looks. Your lips are shadowed because this is where they come together, so I'm adding a little bit of R56. And then I'm just going to dab. It's not even a flick, it's just a dab at the edges of those to kind of blend that into the R81. And then her lips are done. So there's that. And then for the snow, I'm going to pull out a couple colors here. The first one I'm going to work with is BOO. And on the ridges, I'm going to add the BOO. And this is because this is where I want the definition to be, and BOO is our darkest. The bottom here, wherever I think it's shadowed. And then I'm going to come in with BOO, and I'm going to start blending that out. So now I'm kind of pushing that out a little bit. Again, not doing the whole. Snow is white, not blue, so kind of keep that in mind. I think, though, it's kind of fun. This is not about realism. This is about just what looks good to you and is fun. And then I have BOO, and I'm continuing to push that out a little bit more. And I'm not covering up all of the white necessarily, but most of it. So you could argue that that white, that fourth color is white. And now I'm going to say I'm done with my 3 blues and put them away. The 2 that I pulled out, and these are totally optional, is B-triple-O and V-triple-O. And I just like this in my snow, is I like to take and dab just a few little, because snow's got variation in shadow too, and little spots. And you can change the way you hold your pen to make your spots different colors. I like to make smaller spots where it's lighter and darker spot, or bigger spots where it's darker, but you're kind of just willy-nilly, kind of just adds some interest. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other color. And this looks more like a pink. It's violet, but it's a very pink violet. And I don't even know if you can see this. Hopefully, I'm going to have pictures of these, still pictures, on my blog. Hopefully you'll be able to pick this up. The other thing you could do, and maybe I'll do this to one of my cards because I have 3, because I photograph them. Maybe I'll put like glitter on one of them. I think that's a good idea. So I'll do that. So again, I'm not really putting any thought in that at all, just kind of laying them down. All right, and I think the last thing we have left to do, if you see me do this, what I'm doing is I'm touching the paper to see how much alcohol's in it. If it's a lot of alcohol. If it feels like normal paper, then there's not a lot of alcohol. And I'm going to try to do this in the way you can see it. This is something you do have to hold your pen up straight up and down. But what I'm basically doing is making little tick marks in her eyes. And I'm just adding some shadow to her iris. Yes, I am ridiculous. I've tried seeking help, but yeah. My mom used to, she's like, you always like to do it the hardest way possible. I'm like, yeah. And that was when I was like 7. I don't know what to tell you guys, I never outgrew it. I really like detail. And it really helps to turn your paper as you do this. It makes it easier. I always wonder, I do this on all the cards that I send with her. Does anyone ever notice this? Probably not. But it makes me happy. So there you go. That's why I do it. So there, and I'll hold this up and see if you can, I don't know if it'll be able to catch it or not. Notice I didn't color the beach sign. If you are following along with me and you dislike what I did, color the beach sign or take another piece of paper, make your own sentiment, whatever you want to do. I just thought that's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to take another sentiment and cover this up because, yeah, I wanted a funny card. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is put glue on the back of this piece of paper here. And then I'm going to attach it to this pink. Now notice that in the pink I have flag marks. Well, we're going to use a flag in the front of your card, and so instead of wasting paper, I cut them out of my mat, but you're never going to see them because when you put this over the top, they disappear. And now I can put glue here. And I'm going to place it. Now I'm glad I looked. Make sure when you're gluing it that you have your card like so, and you're not gluing it to the wrong side of your card base. All right, and then I can attach the rest of these things. So I have my little flag here. And snowflake. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to hear your feedback. If you have something you would like to see me color, please send me a note. I have time with the whole coronavirus thing going on. It's just whether or not you guys can tolerate hearing my son in the background. But if that's not an issue, then feel free, and I will do my best to get a video made. And I hope you guys are hanging in there and doing well. And like I said, I'd love to hear your feedback. Tell me what you liked about this card. Tell me what you hate about this card. Tell me what you hate about isolation. If you just need a shout out, I'm here. Thanks for tuning in, and hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.